Kazeros, Act 2, Brawl Shaza, support commentary run. Before we head into Gate 1 commentary, let's look at some basic information for the gates. So we have major damage windows. Right after the 300 destruction, the patterns tend to be tame right after the destruction. And so some people will use Atrophin right after the destruction is done. After 240 group counter, we have a big damage window where the boss stays still. And after 120 as well. So as a support, you want to keep mental note of these damage windows and prepare buffs for them. We have phases at 240, the icicle pattern, 70 seconds after 240 group counter. So if you can, try to keep note of when the group counter happens and then subtract 70 seconds from the timer such that you know around when the boss gonna move out. You have the zoom out phase and you have to dodge the telegraphs. So you don't want to blow identity and T skill right before that. You want to save it and use it right after. And then we also have the 120 phase. So keep note of those and be aware to not waste bubbles prior to those happening. And Hyper Awakening, you want to try and use it during the shield phase so as to help with the damage check on the shield. Gauge building windows, you have decent gauge building windows at 240 during the icicle pattern. You can hit the boss in the center. For Bard, it's kind of tough, but for the other two, it's okay. And then during the 120 stagger as well, you can build quite a lot of bubbles during that. For on Bard, it's like roughly 3 bubbles. Actually, after the nerf on the stagger check, it's a bit shorter, the time you have. So maybe not up to 3 bubbles. I'll have to check that. For engravings, it's best to use Awakening Expert Match Stream, and I really recommend HA because the patterns do hurt and you don't want to support the die. And the 5th slot is flex between Vital Point, Max MP on Bard, drops of Ether for extra damage, but like that's more when you're over DPSing, over geared relative to the raid. And the Explosive Expert also, if you find that your group is heading into the blue zone a lot on temperature and seeing a lot of destruction angles, also, dark bombs, additional dark bombs helps. So this one's up to you. Battle items, pot, and then you have a choice between stimulant and dark bomb, scroll and corrosive. Of course, stimulant is best on supports because more bubbles. Then scroll and corrosive, of course. And for cards, lightning set if you have 24 plus, and you also need DPSs to be using lightning set. And if you don't have 24 plus, then just have Cliff if everyone's using LOS, or you have a plant set. Okay, let's look at a run on Narok on Bard. For Bard, I tend to not use Rhapsody in this gate, basically because of the temperature mech. People should not try to tank patterns in the first place, so there will not really be Rhapsody angles. Of course, it depends on what your group decides to do, but from personal experience, there's not a lot you can Rhapsody, and so to me it's kind of a waste of a skill slot. So I tend to take Rhythm Buckshot, but you don't need Rhythm Buckshot, and maybe even Stigma could work here. And as usual, stack up Magic Stream and Luminary before you go in. Although it's not as important because your group is not doing damage anyways before the destruction happens. So on this gate in particular, it's not too important to stack up beforehand. Okay, diving in. So usually first party support will be throwing the first corrosive, and then as second group support, you'll be trying to follow up on the corrosive. So note that you should hold on bubbles and T-skill until the destruction happens. So you're just providing basic branding and attack buff and like tossing shields until the destruction happens. And when it does happen, then you start sending. So Z and T-skill going in. This one, it's better if you don't tank because it does reduce temperature. And mind that after a few patterns, he will do the grab pattern. So I move out of it. in this case, I should have started casting Sonic Vibration first. Center, actually. Yeah, it was late. So Sonic Vibration should have been prioritized in the centers, because you know he's gonna appear in the center as long as nobody's grabbed. So the moment you dodge the grab, you know that he's gonna appear in the center. So I should have placed Sonic Vibration in the center in this case. But I chose to wait for Heavenly Tune. So that's like downtime of 1 second, say. 1 or 2 seconds. If you know where he's gonna appear and where he's headed, then it makes it better with Sonic Vibration placement. You don't need to tank that one. You don't need to just guard it. Just move out of it if you can. Of course, if you don't find yourself in a situation where you can move out in time, you can just guard. But in the end, you have to move out anyways, because he's gonna toss the boomerang. And note that this boomerang does have a big AoE, so don't get too close. Stay afar from this area, and then move in after he throws the boomerang. And note that he takes a step backwards, and then he moves forward. So in this case, see where I placed the Sonic Vibration? Because I know he's going to move forward. Perfect Sonic Vibration placement for the DPSs. That they get the attack buff there. Heavenly Tune. He was going to do the snowball pattern, but we interrupted it with the destruction. Very nice. So note that I also threw corrosive right after the first one ran out. I can increase the sound. Here I decided to tank it. You can tank a bit here and there, but overall it's better not to. Of course, whenever you're tanking it, you want to use something that has process immunity. Moving out. Right, Sonic Vibration placed. Because nobody got grabbed. And then follow up with Heavenly Tune. So that as DPS follow up, they still have attack buff. Even if they leave the Sonic Vibration. And of course, it's best to maintain back position. Because a lot of his patterns are back safe. Unless it isn't. So here we faced 140. So here, it's problematic on Bard this phase. Because the other two supports can build gauge from a decent distance. But for Bard, like it's okay enough to find an angle for Winning Music on the center, but Prelude is very difficult to find. It's risky, so it's better not to try. So here, I'm trying to position myself to get gauge on Winning Music. So if you see here, I managed to find it. Yeah, I wasn't able to find it. I think for me, I had a higher success rate when I was trying on the bottom side. So those didn't hit. So if you can build a meter on the icicles, so when they first appear, you can kind of time it so that you can hit Prelude on the icicles, and then you can kind of try to find the appropriate location close enough that you can hit Winning Music, but not too close that you step on the blue telegraph in the center, the blue circle. Yeah, otherwise, Harp is good, Soundshock is good, Sonatine is good from a distance, and Sonic Vibration and Heavenly Tune, of course. Rhythm Buckshot as well. You want to try and get as close as possible to full bubbles. Let's see if I hit it here. Yeah, so in this case, I was able to find the spot for Prelude, it seems. And Winter Music as well. I guess, yeah, bottom side is better. I guess the circle is a bit more oval shaped. Like exit this phase with close to 4 bubbles. I started with 0. And so it's because I used Awakening for 1 bubble, and then I was able to build the remaining 3 off the center. So if you don't know this detail, then you're yeah, not able to. You're losing out on these 3 bubbles, right? So good to know. And this is a huge damage window, so you want to provide full buffs the moment he becomes DPSable. So you want to get out of the way things that you can. So attack buff, you can pre-apply. Brand, you can pre-apply. Of course, identity buff also applies brand. So I try to get the branding and attack buff in first, and then try to do the counter. And then identity buff right away into T-skill. So that as the DPSs start to do damage, they have full buffs. And then don't forget to shield people, because he does that tail whip. And that also does damage. On top of that, people will generally be using Atrophin here, so they'll be low health. It's even more important to shield them. Ah, too far. The more experienced the group is, I mean, this is not even a difficult counter, so it might be better to just focus on maintaining uptime rather than trying to participate in those counters. Because I could have applied Sonic Vibration 1 second earlier and just ditched the counter. Just maintain uptime that way. Controlling aggro, very important. While also maintaining uptime. So now you have to keep note of the co-op counter timing. So the way you do it is it happens at 12:20, right? So minus 70 seconds is 11:10. So you know that he's going to do the zoom out phase at around 1:10. You want to make sure to not waste bubbles prior to that. The grab counter. Some supports think it's better to get grabbed by it. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea. Of course, you can pre-apply attack buff and brand and then get grabbed. But you lose a lot of temperature if you do get grabbed. And it could also, it likely will, interrupt your uptime. It's better not to. I tend to just avoid it. If anyone does get grabbed, though, you can move over to his front and apply winner music. It does hurt if you do get full hit by that. Some people might not have their recovery available for it. If they don't, then it's a lot of HP lost and gauge. You want to protect them. You can always use process immunity to not get dragged whenever he does those kind of patterns. Like in this case, I use Guardian Tune to not get dragged. Counter. Uptime. So 110, he's gonna zoom out soon. Yep, zoom out. So it's important to know on supports that 70-second timer, such that you don't waste bubbles or T-skill. And also, one thing to note is if you happen to reach 180 before the 70-second seconds elapse, then he'll do it after the shield. So that will start happening once people are more experienced and more geared. If you do happen to fall into a situation where you see the shield pattern before the zoom out, then keep note that right after the shield is destroyed, he will do the zoom out perhaps one pattern after. So keep that in mind so that you don't waste bubbles. No, that was a misposition, the sonic vibration. So when he lands, you can pre-place sonic vibration, for instance. Because he moves a bit during that. And start applying brand and all. Of course, if you just place harp, it's just easiest. I just like using Sound Shock, Sonatina because I'm hipster. Just Guard. Of course, failing Just Guard is individual responsibility. The most you can do is just provide Guardian Tune and Win a Music. And if they fail, it's their fault. Just Guard, Heavenly Tune, and... It didn't get interrupted because of the Gunlancer Awakening there. It's one of the rare patterns. It's hard to predict when he's going to do the grab pattern, so you just have to play around them. And whenever you use Hyper Awakening, of course, so this is a bad example. You want to use Heavenly Tune and like one brand, and then use Hyper Awakening right after, so that you don't lose uptime on those. Because this takes like a good 4 seconds to cast. So if you linger after using Heavenly Tune and brand, then you will be losing uptime. In this case, I think I did. So in the case of the Lurker pattern, if you spacebar into him or use some sort of push immune, then it will negate the wall push, because sometimes you get clipped into it and you get knocked to the ground, right? One heal, because my party mates are low. Boomerang, great damage pattern for people on the back. Gnar pattern, snowball pattern. So nobody's tanking it because he does a follow-up pattern if anyone gets hit by it. So nobody will try to tank it because it causes nuisance to the entire raid group. Because he's gonna lock on to someone randomly and start doing process slashes towards them. So like some greedy front attackers might be trying to tank it in order to fit in a skill, but it's just negative overall for the raid group. And that is why also I said like there's no big Rhapsody angle here, because like you're not supposed to tank those things. A bit of uptime loss there too. This is not a great run. Heavenly Tune. Of course, the Courageous Tune on Heavenly Tune is goated in case like these where everything hurts, right? That's one of the best parts about having a bard in the raid group. Courageous Tune reducing damage taken for the entire raid group. It's just so OP. When he does these patterns, he'll keep moving towards the front, right? So if you just stick to him and use process, then you can kind of make it to his back. especially if you were at the head position. If when he began doing that pattern, it's safer because if you try to move to his sides, then you'll likely be hit by these things. Whenever he goes to a wall, he'll do that get out of wall pattern, of course. Counter. And in this case, of course, I use Heavenly Tune immediately, even though it's not the right timing, but because he moved out of Sonic Vibration, you have to, because this is a great damage window. Even if you lose 1 second uptime after Heavenly Tune elapses, it's better. You have to make those judgment calls. And 117. So I'm exiting with 2 bubbles left. It would have been better if I used, like, even if it's just 1 bubble, it might have been better if I used it beforehand. Is damage, more damage for the raid group, and you can build bubbles during this pattern. So I could have used 1 bubble for damage and then 1 bubble for heal. I just spent a 2 bubble heal over here. Best if you can provide Guardian Tune, because these things fall really quickly and people will take damage from them. If they mistime it. This is a bad scenario because it's all grouped up. But your first priority is to shield people, so win a music, Guardian Tune. This is scuffed because they're all grouped up, the pillars. But I can't use heal here because I have to build for the next damage window. So in your mind, the moment this stagger finishes, you're going to send full bubbles. You're preparing for that. Identity buff, T-skill. And then shield, because he does that tail whip. Yeah, this one. I use 1 bubble heal because we took so much damage earlier. And here, I did get hit by it, but I was using Sonic Vibration, so I had push immunity. But it's best not to be standing close to him. Because even that thing reduces temperature. Move out. Nobody got grabbed, so Heavenly Tune. Branding going in. Just guard. Move out. Heavenly Tune. Identity buff in. Getting it out of the way. Sonic Vibration into Just Guard. Sound Shock. One of the great things about Sound Shock is that it has so much stagger and you can use it from a range, from a distance. Helps in this pattern especially. So when you see the balls going into him, he'll get the buffs, right? So now we need Corrosive. I tossed 1. Great damage window on the back. Aggro control is key. Gnar. So I like immediately space bar towards his back as I see the snowball pattern pre-motion. Great damage window. Would have been better if I had 3 bubbles. Oh, and so this is the follow-up pattern that he does if somebody does get hit. This dino got hit there, and so that triggered the additional pattern here. Yeah, so like it's difficult to do damage during this, so it's like waste for the entire raid group. Somebody got grabbed. So always ping if you get grabbed to alert people about the follow-up. Someone went to poop. Identity buff, pre-used.
차가운 분노에 삼켜져라.
Branding into sonic vibration. Maintaining uptime. Z. T skill. Of course, keep using corrosives as long as he has the buffs on him. Oh, that was scuffed aggro control. I got interrupted. The shield getting destroyed. For this one, right? The best way to avoid the grab, if you know that you're the aggro, right? It's to move towards clockwise position relative to him. So see here, I move clockwise position relative to him, so towards his right side. Because he grabs with his left arm, so like this area is not safe. But as long as you're doing right side movement, you're fine. Relative to where he is. So like you want to kind of move at a 90-degree angle from where he is relative to you. If that makes sense. Oh, I have brand downtime there. That's the problem with using Sound Shock in 17. Like sometimes if you don't pay attention too much, you have downtime. Like a 1 second downtime here and there. You have more stacks now. He's in DR, I think. Oof. For this one, his right butt cheek is safe. But after he does a few attacks, he turns his direction slightly, so be aware of that. So like initially here, he slams, and then he turns slightly, usually. And so once he's done with the slams, you want to move to his right butt cheek and notice where he shifted direction towards. Back safe. For these patterns, of course, you have to stand directly, exactly at the center. These axes are thicker than you think. It got frozen at the end. Yep. With the root as well. For artists, door evolution value is great because you can always free people when they get caught in the double cone. CC, Starry Night value great. Gauge plus shield in DR. Sprinkle is also great. Shield plus stagger. Tiger's great. Gauge plus stagger. And destruction. Okay, so artist run. So I place Sunwall first because I want Sun Sketch to be effective in effect when the destruction happens. Usually I'll use Sun Sketch first, of course. Oh, we didn't have a corrosive bomb initially in, so it's taking a bit longer. Destruction happens, identity buff. Was a bit late. Sun Sketch, T skill in. Always remember to stand at the center line. That mech happens. Sunwell. Renew the Sun Sketch. And the attack buff. Sun Sketch applied from afar. Awakening. And then the grab pattern happens, so I spacebar out just in case. So since you know that, I mean, it was hard to tell, but probably nobody got grabbed, so I planted Sunwall in the center preemptively. Sun Sketch. And then always stay at a decent distance and then move in after the boomerang is thrown. T-skill. Grab. Not grab. Boomerang. That was nice because I recognized that it's the snowball pattern. And it was the sunwall placement turn, but I waited on it. Then I'll place it immediately, and then so I moved backwards and then placed sunwall on his landing spot. Staying close and then moving out. Sun sketch. So if you use process immune skills while he's doing these forward motions, you'll clip into him and it'll be easier for you to reach the back. Like this. 251. Attack buff, maintained. Sun sketch. Uh, for those patterns like this one, you want to focus first on reaching the center position before you do your next move. You have to stand exactly at his back for that one. In this case, someone got grabbed. Sunwall placed preemptively. So I guess he also grabbed the second person. Late on the entrance. Door of Illusion into identity buff. So I get the 2 bubbles. And the 5% payback. Best not to get hit by these things. Because it will paralyze you and it will reduce gauge as well. Temperature. We faced. So building gauge. If you do see someone on not 100 HP, then best to give them a bubble because you can build. In this case, I just use Awakening. But you don't really need to on Artist. Because apart from Hopper and Counter, you can use everything else to build gauge on the boss. So you try to use Hopper and Counter on the icicles. When to throw Karos? At the beginning, like basically 1 or 2. 1 is fine usually. And then you can use Sunwell, Carpet, Tiger, Sprinkle, Sun Sketch, even Starry Night. If you stand around here, say, then the Starry Night will hit the boss and you can get gauge off that. Basically, you rotate with the other support. So party 1 support generally will throw the first one, and then you link up if you're second. And while you're waiting, you're not just waiting. You're always trying to keep note of Luminary timer so that it doesn't run out. Always on your mind, Luminary maintaining stacks. Carpet pre-planted, Sun Sketch pre-planted before the counter happens, so that immediately as the DPSs go to do damage, they already have those buffs in. Counter, and then after the counter, identity buff, and T-skill will go in. Take note, it's 12:05, so the zoom out mech will happen around 10:55. Less important, of course, on Artist, because even if she wastes bubbles, it's not too much of a big deal, but better not to, right? Are you staring? 1 tick of Staring Night so I don't get paralyzed there. Rule of thumb is whenever he has these buffs, 1 tick. Counter. Oh, yeah, it's Sunwall placed into carpet. Sunwall. Snowball pattern, so I immediately move towards the back. Of course, great damage window. Although in this case, he was hugging a wall on his back. Kind of tough. But he does move slightly forward when he tossed the snowball, so the back opens up. Very good timing to use buffs for. Otherwise, it's important because like when you're hopping, it's easy to get caught in things like this. So you want to know how to cancel to like the second hop. So if I did, I might have gone grab there. In this case, let's see what I did. So I planted buffs already, so that gives me time to cast Awakening without losing uptime. One heal. I guess I noticed some people were low. Carpet as the attack, the previous sun sketch ran out. Sun sketch. Identity buff. T skill with the Sunwall. I guess I was kind of holding because he was gonna move out. Right, right. It's good. So it's 10:55, and so he went to do. If you didn't keep mental notes, if you do this gate enough, you kind of have a feel for it as to when it's gonna happen. Oh, it's about to happen soon. It feels like it. I can feel it happening. But it's best to keep mental note minus 70 seconds after the co-op counter happens. So carpet into sun sketch so that as the DR ends, people will be able to damage immediately. We reached 180. T skill and T skill used early on just in case there are people using hyper awakening uh to eat up the just guard. I messed up the carpet because he got destroyed. Or actually the shield ran out, I think. Because otherwise he would have moved backwards. But that was just because I should have noticed that the shield was gonna run out. In those cases, of course, on artists, you need to know one bubble damage buffs and also heals apply your side note brand. So in case you missed carpet like this, because it does happen, right? You want to keep note that you want to build bubbles fast and try to use identity buff, one bubble buff, so that you get that side note brand kicking in. Counter, so everyone gathering at the front to make it easier. Sunwall used immediately after. He skill into carpet. Spacebar. And this is, of course, a mech that's really nice to have Door of Illusion for. Because in case someone gets grabbed, in case someone gets CC'd, you can free them up. If someone is grabbed like this, it's free damage on the back. You don't get damaged or paralyzed there. So you don't need to take backwards position like I did here. See, everyone's doing damage. Awakening, which is great because he's going to move forward into me, so I won't get hit by the frontward attack. Identity buff, attack buff. buff renewed. As long as brand. Counter. So everyone grouping up in the front to deal with the counter. Got the counter. Sun sketch applied immediately after. So you want to deal with mechs, but you also want to keep a mental note of what buff you need to apply next. If you can do that, you can link those buffs seamlessly without losing uptime while you're also dealing with mechs. And aggro control, very important, like this. Like the first one, like, he's going to turn towards you, so too bad you can't lock the aggro. But for the second one, you really need to. Carpet. And then lock aggro. Like this, so that it's free damage on the back without them having to adjust positioning or mind about getting hit by the boomerang. Sun sketch. Spacebar. So the moment you see that, you're already thinking about going to the back, right? And don't tank this. Moving out of wall pattern. So we hit 120. Now I have a bubble so I can provide the healing to my group. Of course, maintaining luminary in match stream. So use skills. But of course, don't try to use skills around this area because it might break the wall. You can use like Door of Illusion, but try to use anything that does damage around this area. If the wall breaks too early, then people trying to climb up might not be able to make it. Check if you have target. If you don't, you're waiting. I did lose Luminary, but of course it's less important here because you're not doing damage here. But you do lose out on the cooldown, so best if you can keep track of using skills to maintain Luminary. Shielding, doing stagger, and most important, build engage during this. Uh, because when he stomps on the ground, there's a process wave that comes out. You want to be careful about using skills that don't have process immunity. So, for instance, carpet. Use them from afar if needed. And the moment the stagger check ends, you're full sending buffs. Identity, T skill. Renewing attack buff. And shielding for the tail whip. Carpet, reapplying brand. Identity buff renewed. Attack buff into carpet. Moving out. Sun sketch using here. Yep. Identity buff. No, carpet. I guess I'm trying to build a 2 bubble. I should use a awakening soon. Yep. Awakening. Although there was like so that was not well done. You always want to use awakening right after using brand and attack buff so that you don't lose uptime while casting the awakening. So it's best after sun sketch too. If you're using it after sunwall, then using it immediately after. Because in this case, the sunwall runs out here, and sun sketch is like 1 second late. So that is not good. I just stand afar so I won't have to mind too much about standing in center. Because I can provide a sun wall from afar. The Vaulton pattern. Moving towards his back, snowball pattern. T skill into identity buff. Sun sketch pre-applied. Sunwall. The snowball pattern is a very good damage window. Always want to try and buff those. 1 bubble buffs are your friend. Gathering at the front to lock aggro. I think one of my party mates died there. Failed the just guard. But that's not your problem. Like, it's great if you can provide shielding and all. But if they fail the just guard, it's their fault. So you don't need to feel bad about that. Like, you do what you can, but it's not your fault if they fail it and die and such. It's always hectic during the shield phase because his patterns get stronger. But we do manage to break the shield. Maintaining identity buff. Identity buff renewed. The grab pattern happens. Move out. Sun sketch from afar. People getting grabbed. So there's a bit of a delay. Sunwell. We do lose some uptime. Always move towards the boss when he does that pattern. And then when he hits a wall, then he's gonna get do the move out of wall pattern. So be aware of that whenever you're placing Sunwell, especially. Sun sketch carpet. Should be throwing a corrosive. Oh, we canceled the spirit bomb pattern. Very nice with the destruction. Sun sketch carpet. Sunwell placed first into sun sketch. So always nice to deal with counters and such, mech and such. Try to do that in between maintaining uptime. For this one, right? The direction he slams on, you want to go to the opposite of that. So I'm already there. Because I know. And so I'm already in position to plant buffs. Even before the DPS arrive. So if you have a good read on patterns like that, it goes towards increasing your uptime. And yeah, I get underline even with one DPS down on my team, of course, root and all. So for Paladin, 2 blue used to be pretty goated for gate 1 because the stagger check was pretty rough at the 120 line mech. But since they nerfed it, it's fine to just take 7 yellow. And this run, I took 2 blue because, yeah, it was before the nerf. So stacking up Magic Stream and Luminary, maintaining it. Attack buff, branding, corrosive in. We're trying to do destruction. And once it's destroyed, identity buff into T-skill. Where's my T-skill? Yeah, kind of late, but yeah. I shielded because I think someone was trying to tank it. And was that... Did it cost me in terms of... No, it was okay. So I got the attack buff in time as well. Of course, for branding, you can use Sword of Justice. I just really like using Light Shock. Personal preference. Works pretty well in this gate because there's a lot of process moves. Spacebar towards this location, and I use Holy Aura there so that as my teammates get to the boss, they already have Holy Aura. Of course, you can use it from afar. I guess it doesn't really matter. He used Just Guard towards where I was, so I just spacebarred out. Attack buff renewed. Branding. Attack buff. T-skill. Snowball pattern. Using God's Decree there for gauge value. I guess someone got hit there? Who got hit? Oh. Ah, okay. What? I guess they used the skill, but it didn't clip on the boss properly. Move out. You don't want to get hit by the tail because it reduces gauge. And it hurts. Attack buff renewed. Always prioritize positioning first so that you don't get hit by the axes on the side. Spacebar out. Attack buff. Oh, someone got grabbed. Which sucks because my aura is running out. Attack buff renewed. I just tanked it, but it's better not to if you can. I tanked it with Sword of Justice, I think. Yeah, Executioner Sword. Yeah. While applying destruction. Best not to. I also could have used Awakening. Actually, it was on cooldown, so I guess. It came back off here, so I could have used it here. I just decided to build gauge to 70%. So in those situations, right, the identity buff lights up at, was it 70 or 75%? But yeah. So I can use it immediately, but if possible, try to bring it to full, especially if you have something like Light of Judgment available, so that you can apply a longer Holy Aura. I cancel it. Now, of course, on Paladin, this gauge building phase is very easy. Because both attack buffs hit the boss, Light of Judgment, you can even use Holy Sword, Light Shock, Holy Explosion, Sword of Justice, God's Decree, everything hits from afar. Like what I'm doing, like maintain a decent distance and then just spam skills on the boss to reach full gauge. And once your identity buff is filled, you're always trying to keep in mind maintaining luminary stacks. And also, whenever people are trying to break the pillars, very nice to provide attack buff. It's easier for them. In this case, I use what's it called? Wrath of God. From afar. Although it was a bit too early, so it would have been better if I used it over here. I use attack buff. So in this case, it would have been better if I used attack. What's it called? Heavenly Blessing. Before the counter happens, plus branding. You don't need to fit in the branding because in the end, the identity buff will also apply the side brand, but at least attack buff in over here before the co-op happens, so that you get it out of the way, and then you do the counter, and then identity buff into T-skill applies full buff, and then in this case I have Holy Protection on for the shield, so that people don't get hit by the tail whip, don't lose HP to it. So if you have Holy Protection available when that happens, you want to use it immediately after the cones explode. Just in case someone gets caught in it. Positioning first. And then maintain buffs. Buff uptime. Move slightly to the side so you don't get hit by the uppercut or the tail. And then you can move in and then slightly out. Because the tails have a larger AoE than it seems. Especially if you're close to the boss, you can get hit. And that too, whenever he's tossing the boomerang to the front, try to step back a bit. The AoE is pretty wide. He's not DR during the stagger check, so try to maintain uptime during this as well. As people try to do stagger check. You don't have to move all the way out as long as you know that you just stay safe and try to stay close to the boss. Like 1, 2, 3 kind of. I'm trying to maintain uptime during this, and when the walls are about to get pushed back, you want to use some sort of push immune, so God's Decree or Spacebar in. And of course, 70 seconds, so in this case, right, the co-op counter happens here. 11:44, so 10:33 is the timer for the zoom out mech. So it happens right here, right after that mech ends. Maintaining Luminary as this happens. You're not just dodging. Attack buff and branding applied before the DR ends. You get them out of the way. Attack buff linked. The identity buff on. We reach 180. Just guard. Of course, if you can, provide a holy protection before the just guard happens, just in case someone fails it. But even if they fail, it's not your fault. Even if you don't provide protection in DR. It's just nice if you do, but don't feel pressured to do it. Attack buff, branding. Destruction happens. I just use hyper here. So you either use it during the 180 or the 69 shield just to help people meet the DPS check. The moment you see him raise 1 foot, it means lurker pattern. You're dodging while trying to maintain uptime. I use God's Decree just in case the walls push me back. Oh, I was stuck there too. Oh, okay, so shield. It's broken. The damage window there, 5 seconds-ish. Moves side position is best, and then you move in. And they move slightly away from the boss. Stay close. I just decided to tank it. I shouldn't. And during this one as well, you might lose luminary stacks while you're trying to dodge it, but you should try to fit in 1 skill here and there. Like in this case, I lose it while trying to dodge it, but that's not good. Holy Star from afar. Discard. Should be using T skill. Awakening is also available. T skill. Attack buff. I have enough gauge so I don't use Awakening. But it would have been better used beforehand. I think, yeah, like, you have to stand exactly at the center, but it's kind of tough sometimes. It is way too thick, these things. T skill into Awakening, probably. Awakening soon. Get out. And please use Awakening. Oh my god, this is so bad. That is doo-doo play for me. Should have used Awakening. That's lost gauge potential. No, just guard failed. Attack buff. This is not a good run. I'm not using Awakening. Now I use it. Okay. And the boss phases. That's bad. That's bad. I should have used Awakening way before. So when you're running up, you're maintaining Luminary. Like that. Just one skill. Don't hit the wall though. Not too early. And this party, we use this strat where everyone runs to the bottom, but I don't think this is a good strat because it causes accidents because the pillars are too close together.
유독 강한 기운이 느껴지는 게 있군.
Or people taking unnecessary damage. I try to shield people. And of course, for Paladin, it's easy to get to full gauge during this stagger check. We're already full gauge. You're thinking about full sending buffs right after the stagger check ends. Identity buff into T skill. I already had attack buff cleared beforehand. And branding, probably. Nobody got grabbed, so attack buff into brand, center, and then awakening into identity buff. T skill used. Oh, that's the spacebar mech. A rare pattern. Spacebar. And then Holy Protection. There's another reason why Cleanse is pretty good in this rare pattern situation. If anyone fails to do the spacebar mech, cleansing them. That pattern doesn't kill people. So like you'll notice some people were like close to death, right? But they don't die. It just brings them down to 1 HP. Just guard. Yeah, just run out like that if you can. Identity buff. Always move 90 direction towards his right side to avoid it. If you know that you're the aggro, that's the safest way to avoid it because he grabs with his left hand. Like that. Like that guy just now. So the aggro is over there, right? And see how they're moving 90 degrees towards his right side? And they don't get grabbed. If you move towards his left, it'll be easier for him to grab you. T skill attack buff. Because like he moves slightly forward and the boomerang will reach me if I stay in that position. So spacebar in for that. Or just walk in. After he throws the boomerang, of course. I use Awakening there, although I lose a bit of gauge potential. 62, so in 2 bars, we're gonna see the shield face. Lurker mech. Try to move out, but stay close enough. God's Decree in case I get knocked. Damage window. Damage window during this. And then you find space, safe spot. Just guard. Maintaining head position for now. If you try to move to a side during that, you get hit by those things. So one thing I could have done here, if I didn't want to get hit, right, is just process immune. So use something like God's Decree as he moves forward. So you clip into him and then you can just run through him towards his back. And of course, whenever he has stacks, you're always rotating corrosive bombs with the other support. Ah. I used to make that mistake a lot. So when he's empowered, when he's in shield stance, it can be a fake counter. So like I just like sometimes just forget. Bad play. Happens on homework. Spacebar, and then in this case, I don't have holy protection available immediately, so gotta protect people as much as you can. I don't think I provided God's Decree in time. Back safe. Stay close, mech. Make sure you eat those crystals, cause like sometimes people just like don't eat them while focusing on damage. I've seen that explode a few times. Just guard, attack buff. The right side movement, right side movement. A right butt cheek safe. Lurker pattern. So moving out and then trying to move in to keep uptime. Honestly, this is not a great run. Should have found better footage. But yeah. Just guard. So since he attacked over here, he's gonna move over here. In this case, it's kind of scuffed. So he's not giving us space on his back. Like you have to hug the side as much as you can. So that was not a good run because I wasted a lot of gauge potential on Awakening, especially. That could have been way higher than that 22 there. Okay, let's talk about Gate 2. So the major damage windows in Gate 2 are in Phase 3, Full Identity. You get a few decent seconds of free damage window. And then Zero Line, Hidden Azenna also. It's a very good window at which Brel stands still. In terms of phases, you want to keep in mind at 335, 145, and 0 bars, Brel will phase, so you need to learn to hold your bubbles before these lines. For Hyper Awakening, I tend to use it for at the second Just Guard during the Zero Line mech. So I'll Just Guard the first one as support because a lot of DPSs will tend to use their Hyper Awakenings on the first Just Guard. And then if the battle lasts to the second Just Guard, then I'll use it there. Or if the DPS fast enough that you won't see the second Just Guard, then I'll tend to just use it maybe during the hidden Azenna. There's also something you can do at the 145 land mech to reduce casualties. Right as the mech begins, you can Hyper Awaken at the center, and this will provide crisis evasion to all of your party members. So even if they make a mistake during this mech, they will actually not die. Because yes, the 145 line mech tends to be prone to accidents. So this is a way to reduce accidents there. Gauge building windows. You have a decent one, very decent one at 335 while you're dealing with the stagger and finding the appropriate colors and shapes and all. You can keep building gauge on the center, on Brel, and on the stagger Procol summons. So even on Bard, you can exit this with pretty much full bubbles. And during P2 full identity, phase 2, you can build bubbles on the crystals. No, not the crystals, the pillars. You can't build too much, but a bubble or two on Bard, at least. Engraving wise, Awakening, Expert, Magic Dream, and Heavy Armor recommended. And for the fifth one, free game. Max MP on Bard, Drops of Ether, maybe even Explosive Expert if you feel like you need more Dark Bombs. And if you really don't want to die, you can also consider Crisis Evasion. For battle items, Pot, Stimulants, Splendid Sacred Charm for some of the CC patterns, especially in the first phase against Procol when he does that. When Brel does that yellow circle mech and summons a bunch of Procols that trap people, can preemptively use Splendid Sacred Charm to prevent people from getting trapped. Also, in the underground, the blue telegraph pattern that traps people, you can also prevent accidents by using it preemptively there. To also, just getting rid of darkness, you can also use it for that. And Dark Bomb's pretty evident. For cards, Lightning Set, if you have 24 plus, and all DPS are using Lightning Set. If not, Cliff or Plan. Note that phase 1 is not weak to lightning. She will only gain weakness starting from phase 2. And this is also the reason why if people are using lightning sets, they don't want to use Adrofin in the first phase. They want to use it from phase 2 and on. So if you see any DPS trying to Adrofin, they tend to Adrofin in phase 1. Tell them not to if they have lightning set. Now this is the important part. You need to know on each support what skills are resilient to the black hole, white hole patterns. Now, there's a very big imbalance when it comes to what skills are resilient among the three supports. Noticeably, Bard has a very rough time in Brel because basically she can only use 2 skills, Sonatina and Area, so the T skill. Apart from that, everything will get you sucked in. So bear that in mind. And the Artist is the most resilient. So in this case, you only need to remember what you can't use. So it's Dragon Engraving, the T skill. This one will pull you in. Starry Night. Starry Night's an odd one. She momentarily does not get pulled in, and then she starts getting pulled in. It's kind of inconsistent, so I recommend not using it. And then Heal as well. From what I understand, Heal gets you pulled in, but your identity buff doesn't. And for Paladin, it's kind of half and half. So God's Decree is no-go. Holy Explosion as well if you're using that. SOJ's not fair game. Holy Protection and Holy Arrow as well. Apart from that, you can use everything. So both attack buffs and things like Light Shock, the blue skills, everything is good. And I think also Identity, so Holy Aura activation also does not get you pulled in. For Bard, this skill set is recommended. You can also, of course, use Harp instead of Sound Shock. If you feel like your party is not good at countering, you could also take Rhythm Buckshot instead of one of the brands, but best to leave the counters, primary counter duty to the DPSs. Just take something like this. This run might be on high spec setup. Yeah, I think it is. Of course, high swift, full swift recommended. And then maybe later on, if it gets more homeworky, then you can switch over to higher spec setup. You have time to ramp up Luminary Magic Stream up to this point. Let's see, Heavenly Tune Identity buff takes care of the branding and activating Yearning as well. Yeah, wait a bit because I didn't have time to cast that T skill there, I think. Still waiting for a decent angle. This is a good one. Heavenly Tune, branding. Was the T skill going off? T skill there. Should have casted it way earlier. So this kind of moment will keep happening. Always happen in phase 1. She'll just teleport, make dashes and all, and will move out of your sonic vibration. You can't do much about that. It's not like you can predict what her movements are. You just have to deal with it and suffer in terms of uptime. For this one, so it's best if you can recognize her pre-motion for this. It's that, if you look at it carefully, the moment you see these particles around her. Oh, of course, in this case, it was kind of difficult to see because she linked it up immediately after a pattern. Best to spacebar out because she does a big push around her, and wherever you are after that explosion happens, you'll have a puddle. Everyone will have a puddle beneath them that does crazy amounts of damage. And so, because there will be people trying to DPS her from the back, you definitely don't want puddles there. However, accidents may happen, and so your duty is to, while maintaining uptime, also provide protection. So, Guardian Tune, not Guardian, Rhapsody is best case here. Of course, if Rhapsody is on cooldown, then Guardian Tune into Winter Music. And for this pattern over here, the one where she gives you a bunch of puddles, what I tend to do is I just provide the minimal amount of protection, so Guardian Tune basically. If the DPSs choose to tank it, it's up to them, but if you have to protect them, it's way too much on your end in terms of commitment. At least in my runs, DPS don't expect crazy amounts of protection. Like, they don't expect the supports to provide full Rhapsody and protection and all. Some DPSs can just keep DPSing through that pattern. However, not everyone can. Those DPSs tend to have mechanics within their kit that allow them to tank it. Obvious example is Gunlancer. So it's up to them. Of course, depending on the situation, if you're in a static, for instance, and you've decided as a group that you're tanking it and the support is providing protection during that, of course, it makes sense. But like, say, Pug rules, I wouldn't expect the support to provide me with protection if I am a DPS during that. Like, minimal stuff, of course, but like Guardian Tune and all. Or Holy Protection on Paladin and such, but it's up to me. If I'm doing DPS there, then I'll pot up if I get hit. I don't expect the support to do much. Lay poop. And for this one, if you have Guardian Tune available, casting it will prevent people from getting trapped by the Procol clones. Also, Shiny Sacred Charm as your friend. this explosion right here. So I apply the attack buff and branding, and now I'm trying to protect people. Cast a Winner Music. Sonic Vibration just in case someone tries to DPS through that. Guardian Tune. Now people will expect the supports to shield them up during that pattern. So do your best, especially use Rhapsody during this, because it's a nice damage window for the people or entropy. The problem is though, if it's not well coordinated, they will suffer from a lot of damage taken. So of course, in these cases, as support, you try to do your best, but it might be the case that your defensive measures, Guardian Tune, Winter Music, and I mean not Guardian Tune, but like Winter Music and Rhapsody might be on cooldown depending on circumstances. So again, it's up to the DPSs when they're tanking that. It's their choice to tank, and as support, you do your best. If they take a lot of damage, it's basically their responsibility. Like this is a good example where like I can provide Rhapsody properly. So this is a great damage gauge building window, 335 mech. And as Bard, you constantly help with stagger while trying to build gauge. If the raid lead assigns you to do the colors, try to arrange it so that you exchange places with someone who doesn't need to build gauge. Because on Bard, this is really important. Exiting this phase with full bubbles. Like this. Heavenly Tune in, Identity Buff in, T-Skill in. Now this one is all entirely up to the DPSs. Someone die? Oh wait, we're reading this. Let me get to that part again. Should check beforehand. Okay. So here. Attack buff, identity buff, Guardian Tune. So branding was in from identity buff. And then this one, like, it's up to the DPS to avoid that. You're not providing, it's not like a social contract, social agreement that you're providing Rhapsody through that. That one just really hurts a lot and everyone should know how to dodge it. For this one, it's best to push immune the first one and then you can walk out the second one. Because the first one's really hard to react to. It's really quick. It's best to use Spacebar or Guardian Tune or such. This one right here. Like, in this case, I sidestepped it, but it's... And this one too. Like, she will link certain patterns with a quick dash into an Ezreal ult. Once you get used to those patterns, you'll know to push immune them. This one too. The moment you see her arms shining like that, her hands shining like that, you know that she's going to do an explosion in her front. And of course, there's a aggro searching process here. So even if she's looking over here, it is not the case that she will always land over here because she will turn her head towards the aggroed person and do the explosion. But the moment you see her hands shining, then you can kind of walk it out like I did right here. You don't think it like that you're making it out in time, then you can always use push immunity. Let's watch this again. I walk it out like that. and then she'll move like a kind of a set distance always. So the moment you see her aggro lock for the second one, you know pretty much where she's going to move towards to, which helps in terms of pre-positioning sonic vibration and such. Heavenly Tune. So this part sucks on Bard. You can only use Sonatina, like I did just now. Heavily tuned from afar, and then spacebar, because these are all paralysis. If you stand exactly front or back to her, you don't get hit. But the space is so narrow, so I just heavily tuned and the spacebar in. Now we have the half identity mech pattern. So in this case, I did provide identity buff beforehand. But on Bard, this is not too efficient because this is basically just a 5-second damage window. And to blow Bard's 3 bubble T skill, which lasts way longer than 5 seconds, is a waste. So here what would have been better, because I used Awakening immediately there, but it's best to look at the pattern first. And so by the movement of her hands, you know that she's going to do the find the real Brel pattern. And so the moment it begins, it's better to use Awakening into Guardian Tune and such. And then Heavenly Tune as well, so that people already have all the protection and the attack buffs, attack buff when they go look for the clone and start doing damage on her. Meanwhile, if you have 3 bubbles, maybe even 2 bubbles, you can just use identity buff around the center, or maybe walk slightly towards the clone, just to make sure. Because you can provide the identity buff plus branding from afar with the side node on the alignment tree. You don't even have to stand close to her. And if you have done that correctly, then you have Awakening Shield, Guardian Tune Protection, attack buff in, and then branding in as well. So you don't actually need to try to fit in things busily over here. Now in this case, I did activate Awakening too early and didn't have attack buff, so I had to. So I didn't have Heavenly Tune, so I had to hurry to get there. But in this situation, you have to provide attack buff, you have to land branding, and you have to protect people. That's the most important part. It's busy, so the best way to deal with this is notice her pattern, have things ready if possible, because this pattern gets queued up during half gauge and full gauge patterns. So she might cast it right after the half gauge and full gauge patterns. So you need to be mentally ready as to the possibility of this pattern happening and have things ready. So this is a badly orchestrated case because you're losing uptime. Because your priority here is to protect people. You just look away for this one. A simple way to deal with it. One heal, and then she's gonna do full identity mech. For this pattern, right before she turns DR, she provides a like 1 second window basically, where some DPSs might try to take advantage of. Like, see how here she takes actual damage, and then it starts getting DR'd. So some DPSs who know this will try to fit in like 1 skill. So try to keep providing uptime until the DR happens, basically. And during this, of course, you're maintaining Luminary, Magic Stream, and all. And then your build engage and try to provide DPS with some sort of shield during this. They might also try to build identity during this while tanking it. Now, always after half gauge, full gauge, you're looking at what she does because these patterns will be queued. Whenever this happens, you want to notice first whether you have poop. So you poop first and then deal with the just guards. And of course, for this one, the best case scenario is everyone just piling up 180 and not moving, regardless of whether they are entropy. And if possible, you're providing shielding. And this is a great damage window in general, so try to provide attack buff, branding, identity buff, and T-skill. Dark bomb on top of that as well. It's a great damage window during and after. Of course, in this case, I kind of messed up because I was the initial aggro, I think. Well, it's unfortunate because this person pooped way too close. And kind of not my fault. Well, I think it aggroed me. It would have been better if I had moved slightly and made it 180 like this. But in the first place, people shouldn't poop too closely to Brawl. They should notice whether they have poop first and then go in. And before that, you need to notice the pre-motion of that pattern. It's pretty obvious once you start noticing it. Right here, how she extends her arms. And does like a process move around her. So I try to provide attack buff and branding. I should have provided T-skill earlier if possible. This is a great damage window. Of course, if you have identity buff for it. Really good. Great damage window. You want to keep providing uptime, maintaining uptime during this. Some DPS will use Atrophin for this too. So if you have bubbles, you want to provide them. And she did the find the real Brel. So it was kind of hard to see, so I couldn't react to it properly. But if I knew it was going to happen, since I have Awakening available, could have used that, and it would have gotten rid of the need to provide protection. And then I could have gone up to the real Brel. Identity buff and attack buff takes care of the offensive measures. Awakening would have been really nice, and now I try to provide some shielding, but that was bad. So I'm gonna provide a heal there. Of course, it's also the DPS's responsibility to heal up, to pot up. Because it's not always the case that the support can provide adequate shielding during that. Also, one thing to note is that, from what I've noticed during that pattern, I think the aggro is taken by whoever's closest to her. So one thing you can actually do as a support is, whenever this pattern happens, you can take the aggro you can force it by proximity. I think that's how it works. So the DPSs don't have to deal with getting hit in the first place. Spacebar in to avoid the push there. And then I think I used Rhapsody. Awakening to avoid the anchors as well. And you're maintaining Luminary during this as well. That's why I'm spamming Sound Shock once in a while. Watch the pattern first. It's the black hole pattern. You can't do much. Just run around and dodge the landmines. Another beautiful triple just guard pattern. Identity buff. So I quickly build up that identity and provide triple bubbles area. So this is a bad example of this pattern. Everyone should try to, like, the moment the first just guard happens, that pretty much dictates where people should stand. They either commit to the front or the back, and don't rotate it like this because it messes up people trying to just guard it properly and deal damage. I waited a bit for that Heavenly Tune, I think, because this pattern's kind of inconsistent in terms of avoiding the projectiles. Yeah, I just did like an auto attack, I think, to wait for these projectiles to pass. That one I messed up entirely. I wasn't paying attention, I think. I pooped way too close to her. Don't do that. This one's hard to react to, so if you happen to be at her size, it's like nothing much you can do. It's really hard to react. It's not that important though. Except if you were casting heavily to and it gets cut off from that. You're gonna try to shield people and build gauge during it. No, that was great because casting Awakening, everyone has shield for it. We're trying to locate where she is. Identity buff and attack buff going in with T skill. So my DPS had buffs during that short damage window. Now for the 145 line mag, you're always gonna want to keep note of the bars and notice whether the bar locks on the identity. And remember where you're supposed to go. Because sometimes you just get absorbed in the battle and you forget. I just fit in a Sonatina and then tried to go to my position. One thing you can do on supports is, if you want to reduce the accidents that can happen during that 145 line mech, then you keep note of the lines and you save your Awakening. And then you cast Hyper pretty much at the center right here, right now. And then you go to position. So that people have crisis evasion while they deal with this pattern, with this mech, and they won't die, even if they mess up. So on supports, this part might be tricky. If you have Sound Shock, it makes it really easy, actually, because you can just deal Sound Shock. And for the close ones, you can use Sound Shock as well, or just win a music or prelude even. It's all good. If you're not using Sound Shock for Sonatina, or 2 auto attacks is enough, I think. In this case, freeing people also counts towards MVP, so I try to free as many people as possible. Prelude, Sound Shock. And then you have a short damage window here too. So after freeing like 2 or 3 people, you want to get to the center. Like the stagger is less important because like it's pretty easy to deal with. Attack buff and branding. So because there might be DPS who are trying to fit in 1 or 2 skills there. Now here. Oh, I used identity buff for the push immune there. So you want to provide awakening if possible during this pattern. If you don't, then at least Rhapsody. Rhapsody like this. Followed by Winna music if possible. The priority is definitely shielding, protecting people. And then uptime. Because this is also a damage window for certain DPSs who know how to deal or can deal with this pattern. So you want to maintain uptime during this, but even more important, protection. And now I have awakening, so yeah, it was on cooldown. It happens because this is a higher spec setup, so sometimes the awakening is not back like that. But that's because I messed up a bit. Great damage window. Now one thing to note though, during this, the beginning of P3, is you can send one identity at the beginning, but don't send a second one because she's gonna phase right after, like one pattern after this. Right, she's gonna do the what you call that? Just guard the sauce pattern. So like right after this one, right? Just guard while being standing in the safe spot. Like she phases right here. You can tell from the bar locking up. You have to avoid these scythes and stand in the right position, right? So if you had blown identity right before this, then it would have gone to waste. So remember to save up whatever bubbles you have for after this happens, so as to not waste. And during this, you're basically standing closer so that someone is there to just guard it, and you're just providing protection to your DPSs. You can go. I guess the rule is generally one left to right. Don't try to just guards. Just focus on shielding people. Now during this, it's best if you can try to use some sort of process immune skill so that you don't have to deal with the process and you can fit in an extra skill. Of course, be wary of using Heavenly Tune, especially doing this so that it doesn't get interrupted. She will always do a process. If I had used area a bit later, I would have not been paralyzed there. This is pretty much a decent damage window. So keep providing uptime during it. It's great to deal with the balls that spawn stand on them to make them disappear. But don't forget to keep uptime. Now this one, push immune, or dodge. And then yeah, you can try to kind of trick shot using preludes, but it's really tough because the movement is really random. A short damage window after sidestep. If you're confident, but if you're not confident, just push immune the first one and then sidestep the second. In this case, I use Rhapsody to provide protection while not getting paralyzed. But of course, if people fail to just guard, it's not your fault. It's their problem. Of course, as a support, if you can provide protection just in case, right, as an insurance, is great. But like, you don't need to feel um, too pressured, and that was unfortunate because my Heavenly Tune got interrupted. The issue with this skate, right, is that she's really fast, and she has a lot of process push moves, and it's really annoying sometimes, like that. Sure, Heavenly Tune gets interrupted. So if you don't have Buckshot, it's gonna be difficult to hit this one. Of course, you can hit it with Prelude, but it's like tough. Your priority should be providing attack buffs, so that the moment the counter is done and people start DPSing, they already have full buffs for that this short window right after. If you have Guardian Tune, I was casting something else, but yeah, this is a great moment to use Guardian Tune if you have it. She does this. If you don't have it, then Shiny Sacred Charm, of course. This one too, like you can definitely hit it with Prelude, but other classes have better means to counter. Just try to focus on providing buffs. I'm trying to ping her. If you pinged her correctly, then it's very easy to see who the real one is. And of course, if possible, you want to prepare buffs beforehand so that you can provide full buffs for this damage window right here. In this case, I was a bit late on the identity buff. That is not good. In a lot of cases, it's better to just send at least 2 bubbles because people might be using Adderfin the moment the stagger check is done, right there. You don't need to counter this, especially tough with Prelude. The idea though is that even if you don't counter her, as long as everyone's inside the circle, right next to her, they don't get hit by anything because all the bad stuff happens outside. So this is actually a very good damage window. And if possible, it's best to counter her as latest as possible. Because the problem is everyone's just trying to stack counter hits. So you try to counter it as soon as possible. But it's actually better raid-wide to counter her late so as to extend this damage window and also induce groggy state after. But of course that rarely happens, so you can try to do that if you're in comms and all. But it's never going to happen in pugs. So again, for the Maple Story pattern, provide Rhapsody at the very least. If you have Awakening, great. Try to cast it early to the Awakening. It's better to provide Awakening earlier to signal to your DPSs that it's okay for them to tank it. If you're in comms, you can tell people that, oh, I don't have Awakening, but I'll provide Rhapsody and such. Or if worst comes to worst, I don't have Rhapsody, I don't have Awakening, but at least I can provide Guardian Tune and Winter Music Shield. As long as you're close to her for that one, you don't get paralyzed by the particles. Oh, I think I got caught at the very end of the push immunity on Sonic Vibration there. Unfortunate. Heavenly Tune, Winter Music, Guardian Tune for the paralysis. And unfortunately, in those cases, it's hard to maintain uptime on everything. A few seconds lost on branding, but immediately applied. So we phase. Better to start bottom position because of point of view. And here, the most important thing is, well, what I tend to do, right, is, so there will be DPSs trying to use Hyper Awakening at the first Just Guard, which happens around 325. So you want to know how how long your Sonatine Hyper Awakening buff lasts. In the case of Bard, it's 30 seconds, right, after cast. So the timer starts at 4 minutes. It happens at 3:25. So if you want to provide the Hyper Awakening buff from the T skill to the DPS is trying to use Hyper Awakening during the Just Guard, you want to delay your usage of Sonatine by a bit. In the case of Bard, because it's pretty long. If you want to be extra sure, just use it after, like, once the Hyper, once she starts phasing into Just Guard. Which I think what I do here. So I use area here around 3:30, so it'll definitely last throughout the Just Guard. Attack buff, branding. So I'll Just Guard the first one to make sure that at least one person is Just Guarding. Because these days also, we tend to do enough damage to not have to see the second Just Guard. Of course, depending on situation, that is not always true, especially if there's DPSs who died along the way. In which case, you have to remember to either Hyper Awaken or get out to the outwards platform for the second one. Couldn't react to that, Sag. So Medusa, remember not to look at her. And in this case, the reason it's easier is because I always save up a stimulant for this part. If I don't, then I make mental note to stack up bubbles for this big damage window with the hidden Azena. But yeah, I used the heal, attack buff, identity buff. And so I have full buffs in. Could have also tossed the Dark Bomb. Yep, someone threw a Dark Bomb there. The big damage window. And like that. How to get the root icon with underline. Okay, for artist, this setup is nice. Sprinkle's also pretty nice for the extra shield. So like you could consider taking out Tiger, putting in Sprinkle. It'd be less gauge gain, but more shield. Although you do have a lot of shield options from your skills and also from the arc passive tree. So mana food is taken. I didn't stack up Luminary Magic Stream beforehand, which I should, but at least I get some time here. So that's what I'm doing here, trying to stack up a bit. So carpet gets me to 5 stacks, and then sun sketch in. So in case someone tries to DPS during this, they do have the buffs, but of course it's very difficult unless you're like a Gunlancer or something. Also, it is not a good idea in general to get hit by the puddles because you'll have to go poop later on, which would lead to potential downtime on buffs. It is good for the raid group though if at least one person gets hit by the puddles, because then she does that poop pattern, which is a big damage window for the rest of the group. But don't try to get hit unnecessarily, I'd say. So this is a great damage window, right? For the people who don't have to go poop. I'm just trying to build gauge here. Attack buff, and then awakening. Attack buff. Identity buff. So I noticed that she's doing that explosion, so I spacebarred in time. Prioritizing shielding. So Starry Night here, just in case, right? And then so I might have had like a split second of downtime on the attack buff, but it's worth it because you should always try to prioritize defensive measures here. Identity buff linked up, attack buff. And then best if you can use Sacred Charm for your other people. Shiny Sacred Charm. Get out. So I planted Puddle where she was, where her destination was. Attack buff, branding renewed, T skill. So note that T skill will get you pulled out in this case. Starry Night as well, and Heal Bubble as well. Besides that, everything is fair game. So it's easiest mech out of the 3 supports on Artist. If you can notice her having yellow light on her hands, that means that she's gonna do this pattern here. So it's best if you can use some sort of process immune move so that you don't have to get knocked backwards. But it's kind of hard to tell because it's kind of subtle. A lot of cases, it'll just I'll just like luckily be using a process immune skill and not get knocked out. So I have attack buff and carpet in this case, and I'll just decide to tank it. Like hop in and just use Starry Night. But don't feel forced to. And for this pattern, it hurts a lot, so don't try to tank anything. And try to provide shielding, of course, if possible, to your DPSs. Like Door of Illusion, very nice to provide shielding during this. And like this, if you have to go poop, right, it can lead to downtime. Like here, the attack buff cuts off here, but I did have to go poop. So now I'm trying to renew the buffs. So best if you don't get hit. Puddle, because this is also a good, decent damage window. And notice how Awakening doesn't get me pulled either. Awakening is okay to use on Artist and Paladin, but not on Bard. Could have used T-skill before that too. Identity buff. So I use it here, but that was dangerous, right? I know what I'm doing, but it's you have to know your limits if you're trying to do that. So again, I notice it in spacebar out. Poop happens on the outsides, and then just in case I go in to provide Starry Night. So since I just use Starry Night, I can't use shielding Starry Night during this, so I have to resort to Hopper. You always want to provide shielding during this 4-quadrant pattern because it's a free damage window as long as people are shielded. So this is one of the patterns where it's like a social agreement that the support will be providing shielding. That is one pattern where you have to provide shielding. So if you are assigned to deal with the colors, you're still trying to build gauge in between stepping on the tiles so that you exit this mech with full identity. It's not difficult on artists, of course. So here I have 3 bubbles, and Door of Illusion is also back on cooldown. Sun Sketch, Identity buff, takes care of the branding as well. And then T-skill. Free damage window for those who don't have to go poop for that one. except she ran into the puddles. Sun sketch the carpet. 1 heal ball for good measure. Awakening, identity buff, sun sketch. Keep the uptime. Keep the uptime. Key skill renewed. So I just ran into her, knowing that there would be an explosion because I knew I'd be able to link it up with sun sketch and keep the push immunity. Now she disappeared, so I don't have awakening in this case because I already used it. I'm gonna try and find her. We were luckily able to find her immediately, so I plant Sunwell there. And we have to renew the branding, but my carpet is on cool for now, and I don't have bubbles. So unfortunately, I can't provide branding during this. So I just resort to shielding people and then follow up with Sun Sketch and carpet immediately as off cooldown to renew the branding. Identity buff. Looking away. And then continuing the uptime. Counter move, so we guide her towards the center. You can also prioritize buffs instead of countering because you know that you have other people who can deal with that, as long as everyone's grouped up, of course. Sun sketch, dodge everything. So if you have a 1 bubble, this is a great place to provide that 1 bubble buff. Among the supports, Artist is the only one that can provide a 5-second identity buff. Great place to use it if you have it immediately, but if you like build it a bit after, then it might be a waste of a few seconds. In this case, I just choose not to use it. But yeah, it's a decent 5-second damage window in the center. If you do have it ready. Maintaining Luminary while dodging. You can pre-plant Carpet and Sunwell, but you have to notice what her next pattern is first, of course. If she does the, say, find a real Brawl pattern, then it would be a waste of the Carpet because her debuff gets removed. So black hole pattern again. Artists can pretty much use every skill except the ones that you can't. So T skill, heal ball, and Starry Night's kind of inconsistent. But everything else fair game. Like counter, tiger, carpet, sunwell, sun sketch, hopper, even door of illusion. Everything is good. Even identity buff, even awakening. So I cut off the hopper after the second one in order to spacebar for the CC immune. If you notice here, the moment I noticed that, it was spacebar. As I spacebarred it, and then countering. Identity buff is already in, so I use it right after it runs out. The identity buff. Sunwell. Fortunately, she just does that a lot. Moves out immediately. But of course, you can tell from the identity bar that she's going to move out soon. If you don't want to waste skills, always pay attention to this bar. That's the indicator as to the fact that she's going to move, teleport out soon. Build engage while shielding people. Of course, they can just dodge it by looking at it, but some people just choose to tank it. So in this case, we get the stagger. So poop outside, because these puddles can be very, actually life-threatening. Poop. And I wasn't able to just guard in time, but maintaining uptime. Again, that's a very good damage window, the triple just guard patterns. Oh, I stepped into it. Wait, what happened there? Wait, what? I kind of clipped into it. Okay. Sun sketch as soon as I get up. Identity buff for the branding as well. Counter. Oh, I got turned. So like you don't want to do that. You want to deal the counter first, and then you want to go do damage on her back if you're an entropy class. Or else it's your responsibility to counter. There's just so much chip damage in this gate. Artist really excels in here. This really artist's raid. With her resilience to black hole patterns and the abundance of shield that you have. Again, stagger pattern. So just guard stagger pattern. Just guard. So the first direction dictates where people should stand. And during that just guard pattern, your priority is not staggering, because that staggers are pretty easy to deal with. The requirement is not high, as long as there's no puddles around her, I guess, because if there are puddles, then people might have trouble fitting in skills. But otherwise, this is just a free damage window. It might even be better to not stagger her so that you have this pattern for longer. It's a very decent damage window. Even if the back attackers can't properly back attack. Even if that is the case. I was checking whether I had poop. Of course, it's best if you can just look at your debuff bar. Counter. Into Sun Sketch. Keep that uptime. That's the pattern that's hard to deal with. Hard to react to if you're already out of side. Black hole pattern. Sun Sketch. Tiger's okay. Oh! So now I wasn't paying attention. There was a landmine right there. I got hit by it. But luckily, the black hole ended right there. It just got passed through. Luckily, I was casting Hopper there, so I didn't get paralyzed on her side. Moving out. 178, so it's not the 150 line pattern yet. Full gauge. Second Nineveh. Always, when you're laying those pillars, even after the circles have disappeared, just linger for a second before moving out, because sometimes people move out too quickly and the pillars don't stack, which makes it very difficult to hit Nineveh and on the pillars and Brel as well. So she disappeared. Always after half identity, full identity, watch what she does first before committing to using buffs and T-skill. Because of this identity buff. So in the case of Artist, unlike on Bard and Paladin, the side node brand on her identity is only 12 meters. So it's half the range of Bard. So like Bard and Paladin can actually cast identity over here and the brand will still kind of hit. I'm not exactly sure how far 24 meters are. But yeah, I would presume if you're staying in center, I think it would still hit. But for Artist, you kind of have to get close before casting identity buff for the branding. In this case, Sun Sketch into identity buff, and the branding applies. And now I try to hop. I was initially paralyzed there, but the idea was Sun Sketch into identity buff, and then I should have used Hopper immediately, but I kind of hesitated, I guess. It would have led to a very nice shield during that damage window. One heal, because I messed up trying to provide them with protection during it. And now we're phasing. So always remember what position you're going to. I try to get a bit of gauge off there. Tiger would have been better actually. In case of artists, when dealing with this pattern, like pretty much any skill, you have a lot of range skills. You can use Sunwell, you can use Tiger, you can use Counter for the close ones. Yeah, use Sunwell here. Use Carpet over there if I want. Tiger. Also, wait for them to appear because otherwise you'd be taking damage on when they spawn. Also, when you're doing this, keep in mind where you're heading. So you want to go towards where the closest DPS is, which is in this case over here. But even if like yeah, like in this case we intersect, like we're both lost. But you do have enough time to go find a DPS. Like you have way more time than you think. Even after this cutscene, you have a bit of time to walk over to a safe spot. Now I'm gonna try and free up some people. I cast Sunwall for the person closest to me. Carpet, and if the two DPSs are close enough, you can actually carpet and hit both of them at once. Starry Night for the last one. I just focus on freeing people, I guess. Carpet, Sun Sketch, Identity Buff, perfect damage window, T skill. And I don't use Awakening because I want to use it during the Maple Story pattern. Carpet, Sunwell, Sun Sketch. And I start casting Awakening because I know that she's going to do it right after that pattern. So people are already shielded. I'm casting Starry Night and dodging after the push immune is gone. So during that, people had everything pretty much. They were doing damage. Knowing how to cast it earlier is very good, especially in pugs, because you're not in comms. But if you cast Awakening earlier on, they know that they have shield during that so that they can fight against the push and keep doing damage. It's a signal. You're shielding during this. And of course, it's important to know that this pattern will happen right after Maple Story. Like she'll do like one or two patterns and then head into that, right? So best to know that so that you don't have to waste bubbles. Just after the Maple Story happens, just don't use Identity Buff. Just hold it for after, right? Of course, on artists, it's kind of less important because like even if you blow bubbles, it's not a big deal compared to say Bard. It's less of a big deal. Sun Sketch, T skill, Tiger. Tiger gives you paralysis immune, so I didn't get paralyzed there. And meanwhile, I can fit in that Tiger. Always good to know how to abuse process and push immunity because you can do more in the same amount of time. Instead of having to dodge or get paralyzed, you're fitting in more skills, doing more actions within the same time frame. Well, again, Just Guard, triple Just Guard is great damage window, so you want to provide buffs. And then shielding also, in case people fail. Just Guard. So this could be a triple Israel, but it's not. Identity buff, Sun Sketch, and T skill. So I was trying to push immune, identity buff, Sun Sketch. So I don't have to deal with the push, right? So here I used the counter to not get paralyzed while fitting in a skill. Just guard, Sun Sketch used immediately after to maintain that uptime. Sidestepped it. If you know that you're not the aggro, you can just sidestep it easily. That one was obviously not my aggro. So in this case, I noticed that she's going to do the explosion in her front, so I just spacebarred into her. Of course, I can afford to do this because I'm support with heavy armor too. Always want to notice what she's doing. Again, you don't have to counter this. But we didn't know that back when this happened, because that became knowledge afterwards, I think. So in this case, Sunwall for the process. I was able to fit in Sunwall without having to deal with the process. Just guard into Sun Sketch. And we have a full identity mech. They ping. And I fit in one skill like this, Door of Illusion, so that your Luminary does not go away. So that you don't lose your Luminary. You already got the ping, so I hit bottom side, Carpet to Sun Sketch. I fit that Tiger for the stagger. I probably should have focused on buffs more. Carpet, Tiger into Sun Sketch, into Identity buff, into T skill. If I did not fit in that Tiger, then I would have been able to fit in the buffs earlier, full buffs earlier. Sun Sketch. Spacebar. And like there are cases like this, right? Which is why it's great if you can use shiny Sacred Charm. Not everyone will have spacebar available for the CC. In this case, I was not able to plant a skill in time, so I got paralyzed. So yeah, it's lost because you could have fit in an extra action instead of getting paralyzed like that. It's a nice small detail to know. In this case, I don't have Awakening. I'm just gonna Starry Night it. Of course, in this case, the safe spot is close enough, but just in case there's someone who doesn't make it out in time or just decides to DPS her in the telegraph. Like we have one guy here, right? So I'm Starry Night-ing. Nah, that's a misplaced puddle. Sun Sketch. Spacebar because she does that explosion. This one's really noticeable, so you should train yourself to react to it. Carpet and Sun Sketch from afar. Through a Dark Bomb too. Sunwell, but she moved out of it. So that's just an unfortunate. You just have to deal with it. She can't predict her every move. She's very volatile. Counter. Carpet. I mean, Sunwell, where she lands. And then in this case, I think I messed up because right, so I should not have used this T skill at the beginning. I should have saved it for a bit after. So that the Hyper Awakening buff covers the Just Guard. So judging from the timer, it'll be back by 25, 325, but that's exactly when the hyper awakening happens. I mean, the just guard happens. Confusing names. So it's likely that I won't be able to provide hyper buff during the just guard. Actually, okay, in this case, I was lucky, and she did not. She kind of went late. So in this case, I was lucky, but there are cases where the just guard it happens exactly at 325. So in this case, I was just lucky. You don't want to put it up to luck. Just use the T skill a bit later, so that you can have it up 100% with 100% chance. So artist's hyper buff lasts for 24 seconds, right? 24 seconds after, or duration of 24 seconds after usage. So assuming that the just guard happens between 325 and 320, if you use it, say, around the 330 mark, you'll be fine. And the artist T skill with the cooldown reduction from the leap tree goes down to essentially 30 seconds. Right, so like mine is around 32-ish. So if you use it immediately as the phase starts, right? Like if I use it right here, then I'm sure that it'll be back by 330. So I will be able to use it before, because the just guard happens around 325 to 320. But if I'm not able to use that T skill there at exactly 4, or like basically before you enter this platform at the 0 line start, then it's best to wait a bit. In this case, I was able to provide the T skill. I just guard the first one. So if we are not able to DPS it fast enough and we have to see the second just guard, then I'll have to remember to either get out of the platform or use Hyper Awakening for it. Of course, in this run, I don't think we'll have to see the second just guard. Spacebar because of the second explosion. And then she's going to do the Medusa soon. And of course, I don't have to care too much about bubbles because I do have a stimulant that I always keep basically for the Medusa. In case I do use the stimulant earlier on, then I'll have to be wary of stacking bubbles for this Medusa pattern. So happens around 250, 255-ish. And so full buffs go in. Spacebar because it's CS real pattern. Just a single one. And I use Hyper Awakening because why not? But whenever using Hyper Awakening, though, you want to make sure that you have renewed all buff uptimes. So Identity buff, Sun Sketch, Carpet, and then Hyper Awakening, right? So that the moment you get out of the Hyper Awakening, you can start renewing buffs and you won't lose any uptime. That's the key to casting Hyper Awakening. Of course, best also if you have the Hyper Awakening buff on you. Three seconds. I probably won't have it, but it's all support. Like if this damage actually matters, then I'll try to fit it in within the T skill buff window, but here it's already over. The more important part in this case is to not lose uptime while you're casting Hyper Awakening. Hyper Awakening lasts for around like the animation time is around like 4 seconds ish. 5 seconds to have that buffer zone as well. So like just make sure to cast preferably Sun Sketch plus Carpet right before using Hyper Awakening. Yep, that underline. Okay, for Paladin, you can definitely go for 7 yellow. In this case, I have Holy Explosion. It's a skill I've been experimenting a bit with recently. It's kind of fun. It's like backup branding. I mean, not that you need it, but it's very nice because you can cast cancel it to get luminary stacks fast. It's decent gauge, stagger, destruction, and you can be quasi process immune if you have it available and you just like cast cancel it. I don't think it's optimal, but it's just I've been having fun using it since holy area. Like a lot of the qualities that holy area provides kind of get masked because DR overlap and it not providing gauge while you have holy or identity full or you're using it. So I have luminary stacks and mass stream, full stacks, and just guard, attack buff. I was casting T skill and I got blown away. I should have noticed the first pattern before doing that. I was trying to get buffs in as quick as possible though. So I provide God's Decree. Always prioritize protection. Even if you have to lose like a second of attack buff, it's more worth, I'd say. And in this case, we have the Proco clones trying to trap people. And I did get attacked, but someone used the Shiny Sacred Charm for me. That's the value of Shiny Sacred Charm. It reduces accidents like that. Attack buff. Branding in. I just choose to use Awakening, even if I get hit by the puddles. At least people have protection. And God's Decree for just a push immune, really, at this point. Attack buff renewed. For this one, it's process in the front. And if Proco spawns, you can also counter him. If you choose to counter him, you can just like spacebar towards the front and then use one of the blue skills. This is another pattern that you have to shield as a support. It's a social agreement. Even though I used Awakening earlier, I didn't get caught in the puddles. That was just lucky. So it's a free damage window. And I get to maintain uptime during it because I didn't have to go poop. And for the black hole pattern, white hole pattern, you can use pretty much most skills, including attack buffs. And this is why Light Shock is great in this gate. It's resistant to black hole patterns. Also, since this gate just has a lot of process, and she tends to be mobile. I do think Light Shock is a good idea here. Although there's nothing wrong with using Sword of Justice, of course. In this case, I should have spacebarred a bit later because it's like a 270 cone explosion. But I did not have enough time to get behind her, so I should have tried to just push immune the cone. Attack buff, branding. I did get hit by the puddle, so just gonna have to. Oh, okay, so that was bad. The explosions, you'll have to get used to it. It's really quick, the how fast it goes out. So you have to spacebar or God's Decree. I think I was trying to T-skill and then spacebar it. It was slightly late. Awakening, identity buff, attack buff. I have to go poop though. So in this case, I'm trying to not get too far so that I can keep applying aura as much as I can. Get out. Branding, attack buff. Well, the explosion gets you pulled. But right now it's okay. Now I have to be careful. Just guard. Holy aura activated. Like 90%. Attack buff into shielding. So always the 4 meteor pattern. Gotta shield it. If you can react to that yellow explosion, best if you use some process immune skill. Attack buff and then spacebar out to maintain uptime. And we faced... So for Paladin, it's very easy to build full identity during this pattern. Even if you have to go deal with the tiles, you do have enough time to gather bubbles. Also, don't forget to maintain Luminary during this. And now we're phasing. Identity buff with all other buffs active. T-skill should go in. T-skill. Okay, now it goes in. I'm trying to just guard first, I guess. Just to make sure. This is a very good damage window. Attack buff, branding. She's not looking at me, so I don't have to deal with the push immune. Awakening. Identity buff, attack buff, branding going in. Holy explosion. Just for good measure. Counter. Branding. T-skill going in. And she's going to do the half gauge mix soon. Oh, she gives us an extra pattern. Good, good. While I have a bit of Holy Aura active too. Although it didn't last through it. Your priority is not staggering, it's providing buffs. And then shielding. Now she's going. So attack buff. You can choose to use T-skill, but kind of a waste because it lasts for 10 seconds, but this damage window is only 5. You can also kind of cast cancel identity buff. So in this case, right, she does the find a real Brel pattern. And I was able to find it early, but it would have been better if... I mean, the attack buff was still applying from before. So I use Holy Protection in the center, so it provides people with a minimal amount of shielding at the very least. That's why I decided to focus on buffs first. Attack buff. So, let's see. So I use identity buff for the branding in this case. So attack buff into T-skill and identity buff. And regarding the order in this case, it's not a good idea to use T-skill and then identity buff if you have the leap tree option that gives you identity. It's because the identity gain starts to tick kind of sooner. So in case you have full identity, right, then try to use identity first and then T-skill. In this case, it was okay because I had a bit of identity left fill. There's like, yeah, these minute nuanced details. So if you have leap tree identity gain, if you have full full identity, then use identity first and then T skill, not the reverse. So as to not waste the bubbles you gain from the T skill leap tree option. Attack buff. So here I'm trying to build bubbles during this. Build gauge during this. Maintaining luminary with that light shock, 1 proc. Attack buff. Try to shield people, although they can definitely dodge it because it's very visible. And then watch the pattern first. So black hole pattern. Light shock is good to use. Attack buff is good to use. Light of judgment good to use. I have to go poop, but not me. Attack buff. Unfortunately, she runs into a puddle. It's not a good damage window in that case. We're trying to bring her out. That's why people are grouped in the center. Attack buff in the center, so that that you get it out of the way essentially. And since I have awakening, I could have used that too. In this case, it was kind of clean though. So attack buff was already applied. I need to go apply branding and shielding. I could have used holy protection too. Branding. So attack buff and brand are already in. Now I'm providing shielding with God's Decree. T skill. Now I can probably use awakening too. Oh, I just decide to build gauge. Identity buff. So I missed that window. Half gauge. Attack buff. And a holy explosion. So that she gets the branding applied on her. That's one of the fun parts about Holy Explosion. You can pre-cast it so that the boss already has branding as they spawn. Unfortunate, Ezreal backwards. She runs into the exterior. I should have cancelled identity buff there. I also have Awakening available. I should have used Awakening here. I kind of greeted that. Okay, that's a bad. So this bad example. So I have attack buff in, and then Holy Explosion is a bad idea because it takes too long to cast. I should have just went in and used the Light Shock and then into Awakening maybe, or God's Decree. I greeted by casting T skill there, and I left that DPS of mine take damage. Always prioritize shielding, if anything. Oh, my attack buff got cancelled there. Unfortunate. There's just way too much process. That's a case where I should not have tried to use Holy Explosion. It's just something I'll try to do in homework runs. This Holy Explosion. I don't really recommend it. I'm just having fun with it. So watching the pattern, go poop. Identity buff and T skill in. Just guard. All buffs in. Very good damage windows. You always want to have. You want to provide as much buffs as you can. Attack buff. I'm not making good use of Awakening right now. I guess I wasn't paying attention too much. Happens in homework runs. For Paladin, Light of Judgment, Light Shock, Sword of Justice, even attack buffs are all good in order to clear the orbs that spawn here. You have a lot of options. Blue skill, like I mean, sword. Holy Sword is not good because you have animation lock, but sword, Executioner Sword is good. And I try to free people, but after freeing 2 people, I should have gone to the center and applied the attack buff and branding because you have that like 2-second-ish window to do damage there. Attack buff. T skill. Let's see. Attack buff, identity buff. Yeah, that whole explosion was entirely unnecessary. I'm just trying to make use of it, but it's getting in the way of uptime. I should have cast the identity buff sooner. Okay, so in this case, I use Awakening while having Holy Aura active. It refills it. And then God's Decree as the explosions begin. Priority is to shield people here, of course. And again, so after the Maple Story pattern, she'll do like 1 or 2 patterns and then go immediately phase into that mech. So be aware of that. Although on Paladin, the only thing you need to mind about is not casting T, because you can always just cancel identity buff and get some payback, at least. Just be wary about using T, I guess. Like even T though, the cooldown is pretty low, so it's fine. It's really an issue on Bard, having to know that you have to save skills. In this case, I use God's Decree to protect people just in case and get that process. Just guard, attack buff renewed, branding renewed. I try to fancy counter that, but you don't need to counter at all. This one, the push lingers for longer than you think it would. Like this one here, right? This one. So that's why I spacebar and then I don't move to extend the push immune. And the AoE is wider than you think it is too. Sidestep. She dodged the holy explosion. Just guard. In this case, I think I used yeah, God's Decree again. Attack buff renewed. Awakening. So I try to move out just in case the explosion is headed towards me, but I notice that it isn't, so I go back in. Attack buff. Maintaining uptime there. Brand. Attack buff renewed. Brand. Best if you can shiny Sacred Charm before having to spacebar yourself. Because that can happen. Counter. Again, she moves to the center. And then she's going to do full identity mecha right after. So I'm trying to build up bubbles, I think, for it. Did that hit? No, I don't think it... Okay, I mispositioned it. Because I was trying to get gauge off it. Pinged. Can't even aim. You were able to find it? Because, yeah. Let's see. Attack buff branding first. T-skill and then identity buff in. So in this case, I use T-skill before activating identity buff. Because I had this much to fill anyways. Trying to fancy counter again. And I have Awakening available, so I use it. Going towards the center. G. Identity buff, attack buff. Keeping that uptime. Counter. Ah, but it missed. So in this case, Maple Story pattern. So I have Holy Protection on just in case. Attack buff. Then I God's Decree. If people were trying to get out, they'll have Holy Protection. People who's staying also have double protection with God's Decree as well. And it provides me with push immune. I use T-skill there. My spacebar was about to come back. I wasn't able to use it. That's debuff activated. And we have 3 bars left. Just gonna go here. Yep. So what's to note is Paladin's T-skill is on a 30-ish second cooldown, and the Hyper Awakening buff lasts for 20 seconds-ish. So if I use it immediately, then it'll be back by the time we have to just guard. But otherwise, it's best to not use it. In this case, I do. So it's on like a 28-second cooldown-ish. And since I also have a quick recharge on God's Decree, I can kind of count on it being coming back. Well, not count on it, but could. So it's okay to use it beforehand. So it will likely be back. But it's best if you cast T-skill kind of early on. Like as you enter the platform. So the T-skill is back. As you can see. Just guard is about to happen. Around 3:25-ish. So I did activate T-skill. So if anyone was using Hyper Awakening, they will have benefited from the buff. So again, the Just Guard happens sometime between 3:25 and 3:20 on the timer. And the timer starts at 4 minutes when you enter the zero line mech. So you need to be able to calculate so that you are providing hyper awakening buff during the discard. You need to cover the discard with the hyper awakening buff. It lasts for 20 seconds on Paladin, 24 seconds on Artist, 30 seconds on Bard. In this case, I use Awakening for the identity, and we get the Medusa pattern because we hit 255. Attack buff, identity buff, preemptively used. Branding as soon as she appears. Of course, I could have tried to use identity buff right as she spawns to also apply the branding from it. Or I could have also tried to Holy Explosion the array beforehand so that she gets branding immediately as she spawns. But yes, I still have Stimulant available, which I probably won't be able to use. Will I be able to use it? Maybe here. Yeah, I use it. Okay. Attack buff. Spacebar out just in case. Also could have spacebar in. Spacebar for the first push. God's Decree for the second one. Because the aggro locked around me. And there. Yep. Oh, I didn't get the root icon though. The root emblem. But yeah, so that was support commentary on Hard Brawl for all 3 supports. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video. Thank you.